starting streaming. Wait a few seconds here. All right, everybody. Hey, guess what? He's back. He's actually back. He's here on this Saturday, February 16th, 2019. Ed Johnston managed to show up to the show. So why don't we let him have some fun and talk and then let him get back to the nursing home?
No, thanks a lot, the nursing home. I appreciate that one. I guess I deserve that for all the things that have transpired. So, but anyhow, I want to get into a couple things this evening that I want to get people to start comprehending on your rights. Because everybody wants to argue religion. And this is the one thing, as soon as we start being adults and start being children, stop talking about religion and start talking about the facts around us. What affects the children? What affects how to hunt and fish? What affects our food resources? What affects our life? Because, see, we can always put something in front of us that could deter us. You know, it is frustrating because, I mean, I've had to make decisions in life that I have been pleased to. But also, too, you've got to realize, do I sell my soul to the company store? That depends on what company store you want to talk about. I won't sell my soul to the company store. Because remember, when you do a birth certificate, bond, insurance policy that is derived off of called a birth certificate that's registered in every city, county, and state, and people don't get your birth certificate when they register and file you with the state and the county, that depends on what the state and the county borrows for your interest dividends that you're supposed to get off your birth certificate bond. Now, let me clarify this. What one is supposed to get by the birth certificate insurance bond. So let's say if you were born in Houston, Texas, San Francisco, LA, San Diego, okay, it doesn't matter where you were born, they talk about the birth. And remember, a birth is a ship. It is not you, a living man or a woman, or living child of a man or woman. That comes under a ship. So it's the birth of a ship. That's where you get a cargo number. That's like when you get a vehicle registration number. You want the manufacturer state of origin of your transportation that you successfully purchased. See, you want the successful part of the transportation. And see, that's when you start looking at how these things work and how your corporation works. Once you start comprehending the corporation and you're starting to realize that the corporation does affect you. And the reason why it does affect you is the 14th Amendment of the Administrative Rules. Because if you didn't file for your rights to own yourself, all right? If you didn't file to own yourself, you have no rights. Period. End of story. You have no rights. But on the other hand, if you file and you claim who you are, it's like when you go to court, and I argue with people many times over this, and even over the last couple of weeks, and you gotta comprehend the point is that, you know, I've been in and out of the medical facilities of the hospital. I've had complete lung and heart failure. Basically, I died. That's what it means. Look it up, what complete lung and heart failure means. Okay, but see, I'm still here because I got things I have to do. So, and that is the point that not only am I educating myself, I have to educate others. So when a judge, and I'm trying to get people to comprehend this point of filing the criminal complaints, because either you are the injured man or woman or stop bitching. If they steal your child and they have your child in custody, and the state stole my kid because I was just an asshole, I didn't want to learn. People ain't biting anymore. People get it. All judges under lawfully All judges are lawfully required. Clarify. All judges. That's your city judge. Portland, that's your city judge of Newport, Texas, Florida, your city judge of every city that exists or corporation of a county or state. All judges. You got to comprehend this reality. Under 28 U.S.C. 372. Comprehend this and write this down. 28 U.S.C. All right, U.S.C. 372. If they are running under maritime law, they've committed treason under their 1917 Treason Act. And that goes dealing with the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917. So you have to look at how our forefathers wrote the structure to protect you, so long as you're a lawful bloodline native. Now, legally, legal citizens, so long as they're paid their administrative rules and stuff, and so long as they have not violated, committed a crime, not a statute, code, or administrative rule violation, because all they have to do is pay for that by their dividends. And that's their income, because they don't have rights. They have privileges. That follows under the de facto note that we know it is. But it's separating what de facto note is like elected and public employees are supposed to be paid in gold and silver. That goes back to the military days of, 1775. I have put this up in recent paperwork, and I expect people to read this stuff. Because when I educate myself along the way, I educate you. Because if you're not being educated, what the hell are we doing this shit for? What the hell do we care about the children? What the hell we care about our land? What the hell we care about our rights? Why should we be able to, have our rights compared to anybody else? That's our right to, keep and bear arms. You don't need a concealed license to have your arm on you. That means you have to be responsible. You can't be a dumbass. That's like, when I tell people, or I don't tell people anything. I can't tell anybody to do anything. I can suggest, and that's my opinion. And opinions are like diapers and assholes, need to be changed regulars. Including elected employees need to be changed regularly, and that's like a diaper. So you have to know who's honoring their oath of servitude compared to who's going for greed of the corporation dollar. And when you allow the corporation dollar to rule you, you've lost. You might not think it today, but trust me, if your grandchildren get it, they've lost. See, most people think about what they're able to do today. They don't care about their children. They don't care about their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, because of certain things that happen in life. Why should we care about that far down? But what happens if something changes and you're not around to see that change? What if it does change? See, these are things that people need to look at the opposition. And the opposition is in your own mind. See, you don't know what's going to change down the road. Things can change. You might be surprised. That's like the thing that says that we are not attorneys here, that when we educate people. We're not medical professionals. Definitely not me. I mean, I've been in and out with heart and lung failure, complete shutdowns, been there, died, whatever. Okay, that's the whole point. I've had people say, well, aren't you afraid? Aren't you scared? But about this, about God and Jesus. Why should I be afraid? Life is life. I'm still alive right now, so why am I sitting there judging? You cannot judge. When people judge, that's what becomes making an ass out of you and me. And a lot of people don't see that point. A lot of people don't get that point. But in time, they'll see it one way or the other. But you cannot judge today what you don't see tomorrow. And that's a lot of things that we deal with today. People judge today that they can't see tomorrow. But see, the thing is, a lot of people say they have faith. They have their faith in their heart and soul. But do you? See, that's the other point. You can't judge thee until you know about the judge tomorrow. So, but that comes with faith in yourself. That comes in your own security. Okay? Anything else, if you don't have faith in yourself and your security in yourself, nothing else matters. Because the other is going to bite you in the butt. So, but let's clarify this. All judges are lawfully required by 28 USC 372 have an oath of office. And when you do your court cases, and this is what we've been telling you on this and educating you, and I've been preaching about this for a long time with people, you know, if you're going to fight your battles, you have to be a man and woman, and here's how to fight your battles. Now, you've got the code. You've got what they call their code. But see, you have to quote their code to them. That's why they wrote it. We quote it. They wrote this administrative rule. Remember, this is administrative rules, and this comes off the Constitution and the treaties. Treaties with the native, lawful bloodline natives. And so when you step out of the movie and you watch the production of how these things work, this is how these things that benefit you and I. It's like you have a state representative. Okay, so you have a state representative. I don't care what state you're in, whatever community you're in. And remember, a state representative only applies to the 48 states. Alaska and Hawaii and Puerto Rico are not part of the United States Incorporated, or they are not part of the United States of the 48 States, Inc. They are part of the 48 states of the 50 states, the 51 states that were incorporated after 1972. See, these years that I'm telling you or suggesting to you, do the research, prove me wrong. I want you to try to attempt to prove me wrong. Because when I bring these dates to you, I'm bringing them up. We've had them on our website. I put them in my affidavits that I put out to the general public. And believe me, you can always subpoena the Secretary of State of Oregon, House of Representatives, anything. Ask them, subpoena them. Get off your God-blessed butt and do it. You know, if you want to try to prove me wrong, prove me wrong. I would like to see somebody do that, but I haven't been seeing anybody that's been successful. I get threats from people all the time, and I tell people, go prove me wrong. And then I send them a section that what I wrote or what I put together or the structure of the Immigration Act and stuff. See, the border is not open to the world of the Mexico border, United States border, Canada border, China border, you know, Israel border, even Israel or Islam or Israel, if you want to, is not open to the world. And everybody says we should support Israel. Why the hell should we support Israel? The border ain't open to we the people. The border is open only to their bloodline, and their own communities. Read the history. Pay attention to reality. Quit living in fantasy. Because once we start living in fantasy, then our public employees, like our judges and police officers, and I mean police, because police is a policy structure. We know what it is. They're supposed to police us, so we're not supposed to cause harm to one another. But they're not doing that today, so how do we trust them? Why should they have employment? Why should we pay them? I mean, come on. Everybody's paying attention to Donald Trump coming out on that things of, well, we need to cut the police departments. I mean, I already proved the point, and I've already proved that structure that I wrote and put up, even in Superior Court, with Judge Roberts and everything, with the police departments. See, either the police departments are going to do their constitutional oath of their servitude under the Policing Act, dealing with the administrative rules that was passed under the legalization of lawfulness, which I posted up recently. See, it's read the real history compared to what we're indoctrinized. And doing the real history. Most people don't do this history. Most people don't research it. Most people don't look at this. So it's knowing the separation of lawful and legal. And I've done a few cases here recently with some legal immigrants. And so long as that my suggestion and what they did, and they actually did research to prove that I was on the right track, if they follow through with their suggestions, not mine. I mean, I could only, bring things to the table. But they're immigrants. Either they stand up to believe that they're going to pass their bloodline down in 5 or more generations. They can pass their soil down without paying any taxes at all by law. And that goes back to the 14th Amendment, administrative, that was done. Because remember, the 14th Amendment was never, nor could ever be ratified. It's administratively done. All right, because the only thing that was ever ratified was the first through the 13th Amendment was the only ones that were ratified. Because after 1866, the Civil War, when it became apparent in 1887, nothing could be ratified after that. Because remember, that's when it became a corporation. And that was part of the Dred Scott case. So when that became administrative, like I was talking to some people earlier today, dealing with immigration, okay, it's simple. Knowing where your standing is, knowing what year, what generation. It does matter, even though you think it don't matter, but you're wondering why people are bitching about immigration, the Democratic Party. Everybody's fighting on immigration. Or, a woman shouldn't have an abortion. All right? Even though it's her body, but it's not her body when she has a child, but it's her body until she has a child. What kind of morons say that? It's her body with a child or without a child. The Constitution gave her that right because if you're a man, you want the same right. I'm not going by biblical structure that says the man owns the woman. The Constitution doesn't give the woman rights without, her rights. So the Constitution does give her rights, not privilege. The Bible is what screws us up in these things. Now, if a woman makes a decision, that means the man picked the wrong woman to have relationships with to have a child. I don't know. Isn't that scary as hell called responsibility? So a man has to be responsible. He can't blame the woman? Because you get all these people saying to the woman, well, she should have had her leg closed. Excuse me, morons. What do you mean her leg should have been closed? So in other words, she has the right to decide if she wants that child. It's her body. So let's be realistic on some of these things that transpire in people's minds. So if we're not respecting one another, a man or a woman, how do we expect the right to respect a child when it comes into this life? Everybody wants to bitch that a woman shouldn't be aborted. A woman shouldn't have an abortion. A child shouldn't die. Well, bringing in a child that's mentally retarded, and everybody says, we'll take care of them. But 99% of you, when that child comes into his life, says, we'll pay the government. We'll be willing to pay this out of our taxes so we don't have to deal with the responsibility that we asked for this. So if you ask for it in the name of God, Jesus, whatever, then pay the penance. You do comprehend religion and penance, don't you? So if you're willing to ask for something, pay the penance. If you're not willing to do it, don't ask for it. It's that simple. But it comes down to with the responsibility, personal or group. And I don't want to hear the village shit that it takes a village to raise a kid, because Pelosi and Feinstein, and all these idiots like Clinton comes out And remember, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton were the biggest cocaine runners. And look at the village structure with the children's structure. Come on, wake up. So all this stuff is out there. So how do we intend to deal with the responsibility of these things? So when we come to the responsibility, now we have to deal with that. We can turn our back on it. So, but the best way to start doing the responsibility is all your letterheads when you're dealing with a traffic infraction. Now, if you've been charged with a legitimate personal or property injury case, that's where you have to look at dealing with it and make your amends. And that's where that part of amends come in the religious structure. That's why the courts are not supposed to intervene unless you're making amends. Otherwise then the courts could come in and intervene because you didn't make an amends. And I've been through with people that have gone through some court cases that they were looking at time in jail and stuff, and then they wrote up a structure to file back to make a demand letter of amends to the court. The court has to allow that. But that means the man and woman who writes that demand letter has to be honorable in their words and meaning. See, if you honor thy words, you have no conflict of interest. That's why when we ask a judge or a public pretender or, anybody involved in a case, do they have a conflict of interest or do they have an interest in the case? Financial, friend, family, foe, anybody else in the industry in that case. Do they know somebody? Even if they know somebody dealing with that case, that's a conflict of interest by the federal law and administrative rules of the court system. So it's reading these things and knowing what it means. So that means every judge that took an oath of office, if he's acting in admiralty jurisdiction under 28 U.S.C. 372, he's committed a federal crime. It's your responsibility to file it. It's your responsibility to prove it. If you can't prove it, don't file it because you have to be honorable in this. And if you can't prove it, you go to prison time for slander. And that's the whole point why we keep our administrative rules and circumstances to protect them, our public, elected public servants, secondary, and we the people first. But you have to know that either you're a lawful bloodline, we the people, or a legal citizen of we the people. And it doesn't matter if you're 5 or more generations, and if you're saying you're a citizen, that means you have no rights. You're committing you have no rights. I'm no citizen. I'm a lawful bloodline native. I've already proven it. And that's what you need to do is prove that you're lawful or legal. And that is your responsibility to prove you're lawful or legal when you go to court. So if you're a legal citizen, and so long that you've paid all your administrative fees, you can go have a speeding ticket or a traffic ticket or anything erased. Hey, I can prove I paid my taxes. I can prove I paid this. I can prove I paid that. You're supposed to protect me under administrative rule. See, if you start paying attention, to the circumstances, that either you have a lawful right versus being a legal citizen. So if you're a legal citizen, as long as you pay your administrative rules and follow through everything administratively, it doesn't matter if you got a traffic ticket. You already paid them for the protection of it. Did you injure somebody? No. Did you cause property damage when you're doing 60 miles an hour down the street in a 45? No. So their administrative rule of the ticket doesn't apply to you. You already paid your administrative rules to protect you. Step out of the movie. Watch the protection. Okay? And if you're lawful, you don't need a driver's license. You don't need an insurance package. I've already put that up again. And we'll get that put up on new.org and trackers here again on the insurance and a few more of the traveling rights. And we'll get the other stuff on the traveling privileges if you're an immigrant. But so long as you're paying your administrative rules, as an immigrant, you have privileges and you've already paid the out-of-pocket expense to protect you. If you're a lawful bloodline native under the Bankruptcy Act of 1933, you're already covered. And actually, it goes back to the Bankruptcy Act of 1865. And we'll get that posted up on new.org and trackers. I think I sent that information in. If that information is in, we'll get it posted up and printed. But please, people, read this stuff. You know, because I mean, a lot of stuff I do get. I do the research. If I don't do the research on these projects, you know, I mean, it's our butt on the line. We're not doctors. We're not attorneys. We're not professionals. We're just the next guy in the street, as it says in our letter that we put out on our public notice on all rights reserved. So, and with all rights reserved is knowing that you can put it lawful or legal. So, and that's the point, is knowing what the legal points of these things are. The lawful points of these things are. And so we are working on these things. And now you've been listening to some of the stuff coming out that has been put out on these networks here lately. President Trump has been bringing these things out. And I know you folks have been listening to dealing with the public servants about some of their positions and their financial structures and what they're going to do. I told you it was going to happen. Okay, but see, the thing is, it doesn't matter, me, Timbuktu, or whatever you believe in your structure. The point is, when you start seeing these things, endorse it. Don't sit there and do tit for tat. Say, hey, we're standing on this ground because we believe in this, that, and the other thing. So put your words in it. Put your thoughts in these things. Because your words and your thoughts do matter. Because the more collectively you start seeing the thoughts as more than one, it starts coming up that so many of these people think the same way. And then that's how our forefathers saved the Constitution here. Because remember, the Constitution is above each and all religion. And each and every God, whatever God there is. The Constitution and the treaties are above every God. Says it in the treaties and Constitution. Read it. They refer to things about that in the writings. Basically on the immigration side. You got to look at the time of that era. But step out of the movie. Watch the production. Read how it was written. Read the reason why it was written. Because remember, these men that came from, who put the Constitution and the structure together, came from England, Roman Catholic Church, and Spain of Christians. So of course, Christians came from the Roman Catholic Church too, but it depends on which side. Because remember, the Roman Catholic Church was formed by Christians after the, what was that called? Christian Crusades. They had to change the Roman Catholic Church so it wasn't so, people didn't do the research, so they wouldn't know the real history that the Roman Catholic Church and the Christians just murdered people for, if you didn't believe in their religion, you were done. So, but anyhow, in 28 USC 372 clearly states any one of a public judge is running an admiralty jurisdiction now has committed a criminal offense to go to jail. And that's dealing with human trafficking that you're watching right now that's going through the media and Facebook. You're watching these public employees, these social workers, case workers, judges that are actually going to jail under this because of human trafficking. Well, they had to do this because you got to look at administratively the way they've written other administrative rules. Even though Obama even wrote dealing with the human trafficking bill, but it's like Clinton did the same thing. But that's like the Section 4 of Social Security. They wrote it open so they can make a living off it. Trump closed that gap. It's not a loophole. See, when these idiots try to tell you, oh, there's a loophole in the Constitution, there's no loophole in the Constitution. Wake up, idiots. And for those who know this, I praise you, because when we know the truth, that is keeping the blessing of all of us going and educating the youngins, because the youngins are getting it. But don't get confused. Don't get confused. So we've got the stuff where we know that the judges are liable. Now it's point that when you do your letters and stuff, now I put together, I should say, and I'll be blunt, I did put together a new structure dealing with a closing of letters to autograph it as a lawful bloodline native, and it says autograph. Go ahead.
That is currently on the website.
Okay, no problem.
Banner right underneath the picture of the Crater Lake. It's right underneath there. All the words it was sent is there now.
Okay, so under all judges and everything that we were discussing.
That's an affirmative.
Okay, cool. And that is the one thing that all you could use that, because that's what I'm starting to use at the bottom of all my letters for the autograph. I am putting together to have a stamp. I do have a stamp that's coming to me and the producer on this, and we're going to end up with 2 stamps on it. We're going to do 2 stamps because I can't afford the other one because I'm still working. We won't go there. But anyhow, I'm putting together, and if anybody's interested, when they look at this new one under the website with all judges, and in the new structure, I do have a company that is doing stamps on it that will do it all, and I do order a red stamp from them, pad, and red ink from them at the same time. 1 to 2 ounce vials of ink from them. And you could do blood too, because blood is your DNA, and they can't confuse that compared to ink. And if you want to do blood and ink, your blood is in the ink, so it's the same thing. And if you know that a blood signature has lawful jurisdiction over every commercial industry. We put that up. We run it. I've done the talk shows over that for the last 14 years. And we do have the administrative rules of that, I do believe, of the ink content from red, purple, black, and blue ink. So, red is a living man or woman. Purple is basically what they call, what do they call that? Constitution, man or living. But to me, purple goes back to knighthood, is the way I understood my research with that one. And then black ink is dead man's hand, and blue is maritime, and that's military ink is blue or black. And that's why I use red, because red means a living man or a woman. So it is learning what, and you can type this up. Type in your ink structure, black, red, and that stuff. Read it. I encourage you to do this because prove me wrong when it comes down to it. And I encourage people that can try to prove me wrong. So when it comes down to your ink and how to use your ink and knowing how this structure works is very imperative. And that's why I do put out in our letter that we are not attorneys, we're not medical professionals or financial advisors. Because I'm not going to give you financial advice on a stock or a bond, because remember, you can go to your city, mayor, council, and go buy a bond that somebody got a traffic ticket on. Remember, those stocks and bonds that are issued by traffic tickets are sold on the black market called with Stock and Exchange Commission. So, I mean, and that is a black market when it comes down to it, but they call it legal. So you can do that structure, which I don't have a conflict of it, because sometimes if I have some of the deals, but you don't get into penny. Well, some penny stocks have been working, but it is the circumstances of stocks and bonds, and that includes when you buy stocks and bonds of counties. That's like county jails, or stocks and bonds on county jails. Even though county jails are being shut down now, and it's like I just put the structure in dealing with their phone system, how they rape, rob, and pillage us, because their phone system was already paid in the taxes. It's been going on since the 1970s. They've been pocketing the money. And I brought that out in the late 80s. In another area I was working at that I didn't realize I brought out the way I did. So, but that was 30-something years ago. But there are things that you look at in life when you speak up and how you end up back in. So, and the one thing that I do encourage people to look is the Norton and Shelby County 118 USC. US, 425. It is so excuse me. It is so apparent to read some of these cases, to print them up, to have them on your file. That's why when we do our letters out and we do this stuff, to put it in excuse me, an autograph form. You do not want to do signature. Signature is the dead man's hand. Even though Black Law Dictionary says that an autograph could be considered as a dead man's hand, but excuse me, Bouvier comes up with different things than some other corporations, I would say, come up with things, or other family orientation that has gone through the last few hundred years or 1,000 years in our history. But we have to take those into consideration. And so when we look at these things matter to what goes on around us. And so without those circumstances, how do we have a future? And your future is your bloodline. Without that, you have no future. And that's the main point of passing your assets down to your bloodline. And it's not to a church, it's not to a 401k, it's not to some nonprofit public servant agency. See, that's the one thing that most people got to comprehend, because people think, oh, I'm going to pass it down to a church, I'm going to pass it down to this agency, this, what do they call that, a humane society. See, that's the one thing. When you pass this down to those structures, what are you passing down? See, that is the one thing that you've got to look at, what the future is holding in your hand. See, so long as the future is in your hand and you control it. Like everybody's going on abortions. Well, if you honor the woman's right to have a child, you honor the woman's right of her body, there would be less abortions. They have to think. But man and woman and child, or man and woman has to fight for a 501c3, so I got a living off of it. And I've talked to public employees that if this went through, or even a couple of bills that in the state of Oregon were written back in 98 through 2001, technically. If they would have passed, these nonprofit agencies wouldn't exist. So we would have lost, 10%. Well, it would have been 2%, maybe 1 or 2% of the jobs in the entire state of Oregon if that bill would have went through. But then again, we wouldn't be fighting each other. See, that's the one thing that people are not comprehending, how we're arguing and fighting each other. And then we're fighting each other over religion. But what are we fighting each other over religion for? You know, if you read your Bible and you believe in your Bible, we're supposed to be brother and sister. You know, doesn't that go back in history? So what are we fighting? What are we arguing about? But everybody wants their opinion, their point of view. So why does everybody's point of view matter compared to differently than somebody else's point of view? So, I mean, these are things that we need to argue. Oh, so that way we have a job. That way we have an income. I mean, I can argue these things just as bad as the next one. But we all can do this. But why are we doing it? Oh, so I'm a 501c3, so I need the income. Because remember, most of your 501c3s are written off. They don't have an income coming into them. They write off what they're doing at the end of the year that says, oh, I did all this through this year, and so I have electricity and water bills and all this stuff, so I can write it off under the 501c3. I don't have to have an income. And how do I know this? I've had a 501c3 income. I've had it where the state of Oregon came after me because I didn't make so much money in a 501c3 situation. The state of Oregon canceled my 501c3, which I protested and went back and never heard back from. So that means I'm still in existence, and I'm going to might as well start trying to see how that's going to work again. I want to see what kind of raise they're going to do, because that could be a conflict for everybody who's done a 501c3. How many people we do 501c3 in the state of Oregon with the churches, administrative rules and everything, including everybody government agency, because remember, every city and county is a 501c3. Every church is a 501c3. Every Head Start program is a 501c3. Some of your grocery stores are a 501c3 or 9. People don't realize that they're using this structure. And remember, all churches are written off as the 501c3s, and all churches has to be registered to the Vatican, and the Vatican owns all the registration through the 501c3 through 9, 501c3 through 9. The Vatican, Christianity, controls it all, just like Christianity controls your administrative courts. I'm still waiting for people to prove me wrong. I've written this stuff up, and nobody's proven me wrong on it. And that's the point. I'm not out trying to be proven right or wrong. I'm out there trying to say, why the hell are we living this way? See, we shouldn't have to beg, squander. All right, you proved your bloodline. All right, so you travel until you harm somebody, and if you do harm somebody, then you have to pay with your assets, your house, your assets to that injured party's family, or property damage and stuff. See, it's called responsibility. If we get back to personal responsibility and liability, oh, that's right. We didn't need the insurance like Liberty Northwest. And yes, I do have a conflict of interest with Liberty Northwest, and what is her name? Miss Larson from Mars Larson. So I have all these conflicts with that, and it's proven. I got my neck broken on a job, so I'm fighting all this stuff. This is the reality. So it comes down to the circumstances. Why the hell do we pay workman's comp? Why do we pay insurance? Doesn't matter what insurance company, auto insurance. When you register your covered wagon, you pay uninsured motorist fund with that. And I've got a YouTube video up explaining that the Democratic Party stole your uninsured motorist fund that says you don't have to pay insurance in the state of Oregon. And we have the laws on it, on the website and stuff. So, that's the point, that we've already done a lot of this work. We've already put our blood on the line, and now it's coming to this point where if men and women don't start standing up, your children don't have a choice. Nor do we, because we got to start standing up and putting these things in. It takes 2 or more to be a witness to a criminal activity. You know, and if you believe in that, you need to sign an affidavit to it. And if you witnessed it, make sure you do. So anyhow, we're going to go ahead and open up the floor. I got into the structure that the public employees, if they do have a judge, we do have these things how to file. We do have these things. If you have questions, to bring them up to us, we'll walk you through how to file on these judges. Because when you file these administrative rules on these things, they are a fact. So, and it might not take them right away to research it, to bring it up, to have a judgment. But once it's filed and recorded, and once you get it recorded from the recorder, you got to make sure the state and federal recorder records it. And we have that where if they don't record it, they violate the laws and they go to prison. And we do recommend that you do write those things in with the clerk when you file this, to let the clerk know, because that way if the clerk doesn't do her job, you already notified her under, what do they call that, principal? All right, so you already notified your public servant, so now you can file the charges on them. You don't have to play the back game. See, I'm putting things together, and our associates that we are working with, or we're putting things together. When you watch a lot of these people, you see how people are putting things together, so that way, when you read some of these instruments, they're setting up that if you go after them, that they violate their servitude, now you've already got them where they proved it, and so you don't have to file the intent letters or anything else that everybody else says in the system how to play the game. You already advanced the game because they already failed to do their servitude. Now you can file the criminal charges on their homes, their assets. See, it's stepping out of the movie, watching the production, watching how the system works compared to the way we're led to believe. And once you start putting it together, you get to step through some of the maze a little faster. So with that, let's open up the floor, see if anybody else got any comment tonight.
All participants are unmuted.
Nobody's got no thoughts tonight? Well, if nobody's got no thoughts tonight, then we'll call it a night. I'll get back to work on a couple of projects I'm working on, and we will be back tomorrow night. And so if nobody's got a comment, I will say good evening. Let the Great Spirit and Mother Earth look over you, and the Creator bless us all.
Thank you for listening to Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. And yeah, I pick on him, but that's because I am a living
You have the right.
Yeah, I have the right to do it. Freedom of speech.
That's
and
right.
You know what? He's a friend. I actually do consider him a friend. So picking on him is my way of showing him affection. We can't hang out for beer. Wait, neither one of us likes the taste of beer. But either way, we can't hang out except beer. Yeah, beer. Yeast. Ugh.
We don't want yeast infections.
If I wanted yeast, I would have gone back like 10 girlfriends, and I would have plenty of it. Anyways, the thing is,
you didn't have to go that far, but that's okay.
Hey, somebody's got a good laugh out of it. That's a good thing. See, even my son got a laugh. Now, you guys got to realize, if you don't make a change in your own life, change is never going to come to you at all. You're going to wake up, go to work, come home, play video games, watch TV, or whatever you do, go to sleep, turn around, get up, go to work, and you're going to be basically a drone, an ant, one of a community where the queen or the leader pretty much controls you. You'll have no say in your life. So you make the change.
Yeah, what was that one movie that did on the medical Idiocracy? Did you ever watch that movie?
Never seen it, as far as I know.
Idiocracy. I will get that posted up, and I'll get that sent to you. But everybody needs to watch that one.
Also,
everybody.
Interstate 60.
Yes, don't forget Interstate 60 in the movie,
You
but
you watch Interstate
Idiosyncrasy, all.
60. You watch it, and you'll realize what
Hmm.
we expect to see is what we see, or what we've been programmed to see is what we see. That's why you look at all this legal jargon, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so difficult. You don't need to look at it all and download it all in your brain at once. Find something that you need to start with, like let's say straw man account. Learn as much as you can about that. Learn the facts, learn the laws, learn everything you can about that, and then expand. Go further out. You get a cornerstone, like building a house.
Hmm.
You get a cornerstone and you use that as the base.
Right.
But if you don't, you can't build a roof first, otherwise it's going to just crash on your head and most likely kill you.
That's true. That depends if you know how to build a roof or not.
Yeah, true. But either way, you find your base, you work on it, and you expand. And eventually you'll have a fortress of knowledge to where
Yeah.
you will be able to sit there. And I think there is a picture. Let me look at it. Um, there's a picture I've got that basically has a policy officer. That yep, there it is. I'm going to transition. It goes, dispatch. I'm going to need backup. I got someone with a camera here talking about rights, and they know the law better than I do.
Now, we do have that posted up on the website, don't we?
That picture? No, I can get that.
Yeah, no, it has to be. Now, remember, on the right side of our website, we do have a structure to put pinups, right?
Yes, the picture pen. Yes, and I will fix
We got
that.
to start putting a lot of these picture pins up so people could run with them.
Okay.
And I would suggest putting that picture pin up
Okay.
because people could run with that one.
Well, that
And
one
so
right
that
there
way,
is true. I mean, when they find out you know the law better than them, you got one of two things that'll happen. One, they'll call for backup, and eventually you're pretty much either going to have them all ganging up
either
on
you're
you,
going to jail or you're not, or they're
or
going
they're
to
going
let
to
you
look at
go.
you and go, hey, okay, I get what you're saying, sir. You have a nice day. And they'll walk away. Do not
Right,
needle
but
them.
the
Do
main
not
point is
attack
you
them.
don't want to argue with them over that. All
Exactly.
you want to do is bring up the fact of their administrative rule to them and ask them the question back to them. Don't argue. It's like fighting with a judge. You don't argue with a judge. You say, Judge, is this what it says here? And the judge will try to go off on another tangent and you say, wait a minute, Judge, I need to bring you back to this point. You know, and that's why I always bring up to people you got to file before you go to court. If you do not file before you go to court, that's where you screw up. Because if you file before you go to court, not only do you have the information of that court case that goes in front of what, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, or the Sixth or 11th Circuit. That's primarily the way it works. So I'll go through those Court of Appeals. But if you don't file that paperwork, you have no evidence to prove your statement. Because now the district attorney and them have their statement because you accepted their jurisdiction by going in that point but not filing to clarify the jurisdiction. Correct?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And even if you've already been in the court and they're probably going to try to bring you back in on, let's say you didn't, you had a payment plan and you weren't able to complete with it or anything, you can still file to date right now. You can go in there and file your statements, file your proof and evidence, and next time they come and probably try to arrest you because you couldn't go with that little the contract that they forced you under duress and under fraud to sign. Remember that, under
Extortion.
duress and under fraud, forced you
And
to sign.
extortion. And not only that, it falls under public funds, theft of public funds.
Exactly. Because once they come at you, if you've got all this filed, you can go up. You go up to the judge and be like, Judge, is this a Now remember, we're not lawyers, we're not attorneys, we're not professionals of any kind. This is just information we've learned ourselves. Go up in front of the judge and say, Judge, is
Hmm.
this a court of record? 90% of the time they'll say yes. If they say no, then be like, I want a court of record then.
And you could actually go in and type in Ed Johnson, Toledo, Oregon on YouTube. You could actually watch me telling judges and public servants literally off on this. You can see when they've kidnapped me and held me for ransom and tried to murder me in jail. And you can see the other time when the judges are going, get the hell out of the courtroom.
Yep.
See, it's knowing what they mean and what they mean and why they mean.
Exactly.
Okay, because they've got to try to justify their fraud sometimes they're committing because they don't want to lose their assets and go to federal prison. And now, if you've been paying attention to the media here the last year and a half, and basically the last year, you've noticed a lot of judges and CPS workers now going to federal prison, falsifying documents and stuff like this. We haven't dealt with this in 20 years, folks. All right. The only reason why you're going through this right now is because of Trump. If Trump was not in office and Hillary was in office, we would have had the structure with the British government right now where she would have signed your paycheck over to the British government, and if you didn't give over to Baxis, you wouldn't be allowed to work.
Yeah.
Say, this is where people are not getting. Go ahead.
Well, it's the aspect of so many people hate Trump, and the thing is, you got to realize Trump is the CEO, the president of a corporation. There has not been.
Okay, let me cut you off. There was somebody else trying to speak. Somebody was trying to chime in, or am I being rude? No, I'm not trying to. I'm just saying, as I thought I heard somebody else click in trying to sound off. So go ahead. Okay, we got background, but go ahead. Go ahead. Finish what you were saying.
Trump is the president of a corporation. We haven't had a federal government, a lawful federal government, since, what was it, 1933?
No, technically, that comes back after the Civil War. That was done after the South walked out in 1863. That's why we have the 1863 Lawful Bloodline Natives Facebook site is going through that structure, going back in the real history. Okay, that's like going back in the other part of history when Lincoln, all right, put in, and the last thing that was ever ratified before the Civil War was the 13th Amendment. Prior to that, every amendment after that could not have ever been ratified because the minute they went to a corporation government, and that's when they started doing the corporation treaties. Because the original treaty that the United States and the British government has with, like, the state of Oregon, the state of California, state of Nevada, state of Connecticut, New Mexico, all right, New Jersey. People, you got to read these foundations with the Constitution of your state, because the Constitution of your state says they cannot tax you. State and federal income tax. They cannot tax you on your property taxes. It states it in their treaties. And I've read them all. We've got them up on new.org and trackers. So this is the point, is reading this stuff and knowing what the circumstances are. All right? So we don't have to pay for all this. Now, the thing is, when they did the Bankruptcy Act in 1933, the birth certificate covered all the structure, like our property and income tax, when they tried to do this. So that way they were forming these new agencies. So that way we had public safety or public, the fire department or medical. Because remember, medical, they couldn't even charge medical until 1981. Prior to that, there was no medical coverage. It was all covered universally because 1% of your property tax went to all medical coverage, and it still does today. It hasn't changed. They just changed some of the administrative rules on these taxes. And this is why it's so apparent sitting down doing the research, so you know what the taxes are compared to what you think it is or what we're being charged for and where the money's going. I mean, it's like in Lincoln County, I mean, when they started doing the helicopter, the private helicopter, and the private funding, I'm the one who brought all that into Lincoln County. And everybody panicked, the county commissioners. Then all of a sudden, everybody started endorsing. This is all on public record. I mean, this is actually in the commercial record of Lincoln County. So, I mean, and then right now it's $50 or $75 a year. If you join the deal, you get free ambulance coverage and you get free helicopter coverage from either from Newport to Corvallis or Newport to Portland. All right, this is in the structure that is done in Lincoln County, but it runs you $75 a year for the tax. Basically, they're putting it on another tax. And see, they were trying to bill it so that way, if you were not a resident, you would pay these extraordinary fees, you know, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $8,000 fees on it. But as long as you're a member and it comes off your property tax the way it was done, they can't go after it. So it's still funded off it, and all they do is write off on your birth certificate strawman account. So that's the whole point. With your birth certificate strawman account, Executive Order 2040, what Woodrow Wilson and what FDR did is correct. They put that in because when the Bankruptcy Act happened is when the British government went bankrupt to we the people. We the people don't own the debt. We don't owe anything of a debt. We have the beneficiary of the debt that they have to pay us. And so, you know, we brought that up many times, and that's been through that, and people have been watching what's going on the internet and stuff, and that's the point, is bringing these facts out. But it's doing it by proper education instead of arguing about these issues. We can't argue about these things. We have to know how to protect the children. And once we protect ourselves, then the children are protected. So, and that's the one thing that, you know, when you come back to how the insurance structure works, because remember, we've got this stuff, and I just sent that we'll have that put up on the Rights to Travel on the insurance structure. We'll have that. That's 24 pages, I think it is. I just sent that again. I don't know if we put that up on the website or not, but I do. I recently sent it to you again. It's 24 pages on insurance. And we'll make sure that's up on the website on the Rights to Travel on the circumstances of insurance. But it's knowing this because, see, the thing is, when you pay an insurance policy right now today, people don't get it. 5 to 8% of whatever insurance policy you pay for goes back to the public funding for insurance for lawful bloodline natives. And that was secured by the 1937 Social Security Act, because Social Security Act is not a government contract of a government agency. Social Security is a contract for we the people of lawful bloodline natives to collect. And I do have both of those court cases. I've been publicizing them. They've been in my letter that I've been putting out for the talk show for the last 8 years. So, I mean, the facts are there. They wrote it, we quote it. We're bringing the evidence to the general public and to you. And so we're asking you to advise it, to look at it, and, you know, prove us right or wrong. And if we're right, educate your children in these circumstances. So anyhow, I know I got carried off on another point, but I just had to run off in that direction to a degree. So, but go ahead.
That will teach me to say anything at the end of the show, because it's not the end of the show then.
I know that. I know that's why I enjoyed the opportunity you gave me. So, well, I could run with it. I did. So, but anyhow, I like to say with that is that the whole point that it comes from knowledge. So, with that is, may the Great Spirit bless you. Look at things. Open your mind out. Doesn't matter what religion you believe in, any religion that you follow, the Constitution gives you the equal rights to that. So don't judge somebody else unless you're willing to be judged yourself.
Yeah, basically. Seriously. Just think about it, guys.
Well, yeah, but the Constitution gives us right in the 48 states. Remember, there's only 48 states united.
Yeah. And if you wonder what the 48 states are, each one is connected to the other one. Therefore, if it's not connected, like Alaska or Hawaii, both of those are commercially grabbed states. They're actually
Puerto Rico.
Now Puerto Rico.
And don't forget Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
But see, Alaska technically is absolutely 100% no man's land. Not Russia, not United States. It's no man's territory. And it's in history books of that. You could buy and sell, but you can't buy no man's land. You could change the title to something you don't own because they call it a title, but it's still no man's land.
Okay. But you guys find a foundation, a cornerstone, and build from there. Once you start building, I mean, there's a lot who have listened to this and who have talked in here and asked questions. And when I've watched them, I've even done it from the very beginning. I started listening to Ed, and I started getting involved with it all. The amount of leaps and bounds I've made by just waiting and learning and waiting for the right time to use that knowledge is amazing. I've got what now 4 affidavits out there, and I can use each one of them because all 4 of those affidavits are lawfully binding because they were up there for 30 days each, and nobody rebutted them. Therefore, it is admissible as
Law
lawful.
and commerce.
Yeah. So.
And commerce is the interstate law that they preach about that gives them authority through the interstate administrative rules.
Exactly. So you just learn. I know it seems daunting right now, but as you learn more of it will make sense, and you'll start being able to make connections like Ed does here. That where, oh, I remember hearing about this, and that actually makes sense. I can use it for this.
Mm-hmm.
It's really simple. Once you look at it and learn the basics, you can handle almost anything that these commercial commies send us.
Mm-hmm. So, anyhow, I'm going to call it a night.
Yep. So, because Ed's evidently got a circus back there.
Yep.
All right. So
we'll talk to you soon.
Y'all have a good night.
All right.
And Ed, you still probably got a few people wanting to talk to you after this. So we're going to end the stream. Thank you very much for listening to us. And see you next Saturday. Maybe tomorrow. Depends on